Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you so much for the intro. Okay, well, good morning slash afternoon, wherever you are. Um, Today we would love to speak with you about open government and education. And this is such an interesting year in many aspects. And right now, I'm in Slovakia, and our schools are currently shut down in a number of countries, here as well. High schools are closed, and also grades 5 through 8 in elementary schools are not operating. So kids are at home. And my former colleague's daughter, she's studying for her final exams in the high school, and she suddenly lost access to the library and books. And we've seen how important it is now, perhaps more than ever, to have good access to educational resources, ideally open educational resources. And a lot of public money has been spent on the creation of resources through grants and other schemes here in our country. A lot of textbooks that are used in schools were actually commissioned by the government, so they pay the money to the publishers to create these textbooks, but a lot of them are still just not available and completely inaccessible, and they're closed by default. And it would be so cool if they were open by default. And some of you have heard about open government partnership, through OGP, which is the abbreviation for Open Government Partnership. This is a lot of open policies have been adopted. A lot of data has been opened up, and there's no reason why educational resources could not also follow suit. So to change the default from closed, if something has been funded or co-funded with public money, to changing the default to open. And traditionally, OGP has been operating on national levels. So the central governments in the countries were the ones that were adopting policies. But recently, it has started expanding to the regional level or sub-national level. In the U.S., it could be states, it could be municipalities, and there's a lot of opportunity to adopt open policies, open educational policies at those level as well. So Jeremy and I have been working with OGP first when we were working for our governments in the U.S. and in Slovakia respectively, and now on the civil society side, because Open Government Partnership is a partnership between the governments and those who are not governments, like academia and nonprofits, civil society groups. So now it's this really great opportunity to see OGP expand to the subnational level and get involved there. So I think John will explain a lot more about that.
Sure. So I'm happy to chat a little bit about how OGP works and the wonderful opportunity that Jan was alluding to. And first, I just want to also recognize, I know a number of folks here are already working on really incredible open education initiatives, either at their local institution or even with their local government partners at the municipal or regional level. So we look forward to hearing from you as well. We don't want to just make this about us talking at you the whole time. We have a short amount of time here, but I'm going to try to keep my portion short, even shorter, so we can also hear from you. So as many of you may know, the Open Government Partnership is actually it's an organization that got started under the Obama administration in the US with, I think, 7 other countries back in 2011. And initially, this was created to work with civil society members in partnership to kind of foster greater transparency in governance, to increase the amount of oversight in government processes, and also increase the number of services that were provided to citizens. So since then, we've seen the Open Government Partnership really blossom and expand. While the US's role has decreased in the last 4 years, there are now 79 countries that are involved at the national level with the OGP, which is really incredible. So the OGP has kind of changed a little bit over the years, but it's found new ways to draw in reporting mechanisms and civil society engagement and so on, and hosts, well, has up until this year hosted in-person summits to share out a lot of the really wonderful lessons learned through these different initiatives. So together with OGP representatives at the government level, civil society members will work with their counterparts and co-create action plans. So these are 2-year action plans that the governments then are on the hook to enact. These action plans have a number of different commitments that that are local or specific to the local country's needs and address a broad range of issues, from anything from increased fiscal transparency or access to information and data to education. So this has been a really wonderful opportunity for open education efforts to kind of work with policy in the past. And as we likely know, it seems like the best way to enact long-term change is to have not just the kind of local will and local efforts, but to have, or not just have policy efforts, but to have kind of like a combination of top-down policy, buttressing and supporting local efforts for change. So we need both the kind of grassroots elements plus the top-down policy working united for this kind of lasting change that we want to see, especially in open education. So why is it important right now? As Jan mentioned, initially the OGP was only open to national governments. So working at the national level with civil society members as well. But fortunately, after a pilot, the OGP has started a new initiative at the local level called OGP Local. And this group got launched officially in 2020. So within the last, I think about month or so, 56 new cities have joined OGP, which is pretty incredible. So a lot of these new cities will be working on some mentorship and training. They'll be developing their own action plans and working to figure out the best ways to meet their community needs as well, with a little bit more flexibility. So one of the reasons, well, there are a number of different reasons, but one of the reasons that we think that this is particularly important is because we are seeing a shift in a lot of countries where education decision-making gets made at more of a local level of governance. So this isn't true across the board for all countries, but in a number of countries, in the US, for example, the decision-making is not done at the policy, at the federal level, it's done more at the local level. So this opens up a new avenue for communication for civil society advocates. Also, education is generally a nonpartisan issue. It's a win-win. So whether you have someone from one party or another in the office, you can very easily make a political case for why it would support their end goals. So education is kind of a really good avenue for discussion on meeting other goals as well. And education in the OGP commitments in the past has helped people achieve improvement in public services, open procurement, open data, more fiscal responsibility, and so on. So there are a lot of different ways that we can parlay open education commitments to affect other goals. Finally, this is a new initiative. So OGP Local is relatively new, and with that comes likely a little bit more flexibility. And I'm projecting this here, but we tend to assume that as this kind of startup initiative gets its bearings, there will be some flexibility with the processes and so on getting started. This is just my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of OGP Local by any means, but already we're seeing a really wonderful kind of informal approach to communication via Slack messages. So they have a Slack community that anyone can join. It's very friendly. also the OGP local action plans are not as as strict with 2-year commitments that OGP national action plans are. So they can be as short as a year, I think, or much longer than 2 years. So there's a little bit more flexibility there. As with OGP national, there are OGP local contacts that you can just reach out to. So on the website, and I will post the links to both right here. On the OGP website, you can find member lists where you can literally reach out to the government liaison and communicate, your needs or make your case for whatever you're trying to to discuss, preferably open education. So it's kind of a wonderful element of OGP National that's continued at the local level, that really direct option for communication. But I just want to pause there and note that while this is a really wonderful vehicle for policy, that we can draw from the spirit of OGP and that spirit of partnership and collaboration in any of our efforts, even if they're not tied to these kind of official policy vehicles. So I know a lot of us are looking at how we can support the UNESCO OER recommendation, how we can look at OGP efforts and other policy means, but even if you are not connected to any kind of policy creation, you can still engage with your local institutions and government reps in really meaningful ways. And I think Jan had an example of that might be worth sharing for Bratislava.
I'm trying to remember which story it was that you were referring to. Could you give me a hint? Because I was.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that. I think you had mentioned how so Bratislava was not part of OGP local, but was still working
on
the same principles.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, absolutely. And Bratislava was originally considering that it might join OGP, but then COVID happened and everything went into emergency mode. And it's been really hard for the local government with all the new challenges. And what they decided is, well, we may not be able to join the current cohort, but we are pretty much going to be kind of like a secret OGP inside, or a very informal OGP inside. So yes, we will apply those principles. Yes, we will have kind of like an internal plan of what we want to do. Unfortunately, we do not have the resources to participate, more internationally or put a lot of weight. We do not have a person who would dedicate their whole time on doing that. But we like those principles. We want to do it. And although we are not part of OGP, we were going to behave as if we were. So yes, we are going to be transparent. Yes, we will have our commitments and other formal documents of the city, as well as informal ones. And we are going to push for transparency. And out of those 56 cities that gentleman mentioned, only one is in the US. And I think the majority of you are from the US. The one that was accepted in this new cohort is Los Angeles, right? And even if you are not from Los Angeles, it doesn't mean that this is not something for you. There's plenty of ways that you can participate. Number one, support subnational governments from other parts of the world, or work on OGP very informally wherever you are. Some of you who are here in this room are working on the state level. Some of you may be working elsewhere. You may have very informal involvement. Even if you are not directly part of OGP, you can still use the resources and you can apply the principles of OGP. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, I think it was because of the really wonderful momentum that all of these open education NGOs had already, that enabled the US anyway to very easily create well, I shouldn't say very easily, but relatively easily create commitments to open education in the national action plans that I was a part of in my previous job. So we heavily relied on the expertise of civil society colleagues from Spark, from Creative Commons, and a number of other organizations to help guide us in our thinking about it, because it was outside of our expertise. So I think what Jan is saying is really important. If you are already engaged in conversations with your government reps, I know Dan McGuire had actually just emailed me this morning about some of this, which is fantastic. If you're already doing that, wonderful, let's talk. If you're not doing that, that's still great. We would still love to connect with you, because this swell of expertise that civil society colleagues have is what governments need to be able to access when they are ready to make commitments. So we really hope that wherever you are maybe open to staying in touch and also contributing in some way. So I guess with that, I know we have a few minutes left, but I just wanted to pause and see if there were any questions before we got into some takeaways and some ways to get involved or participate in resource development. Feel free to unmute yourself or post any questions that you might have in the chat space, and then we can share some options for collaboration. Thank you, Jonathan. So Jonathan just wrote in the chat, I wish education were a nonpartisan issue, but it doesn't really seem to be that way in authoritarian countries like the US. So thank you for that optimism. I think that you can very easily still make the case that education meets the end goals of different policymakers. You just have to cater the language that you use to essentially frame the argument to meet their needs. And I don't think that will be authoritarian for much longer. My humble opinion. Any other thoughts or questions? Thank you, Jonathan, for that. Oh yeah, I see Dan crossing his fingers. All right. I want to leave a little extra moment in case anyone has any thoughts or just any questions on what we had just discussed as well, because I know this is.
Could you speak maybe, Jen or Jan, about what you mentioned earlier in my communication about the focus on K-12 and or how that's defined in various places, how that's probably the best venue to approach many of local governments with open education?
Thanks. Actually, can I turn that around on you? And I know you gave a really good explanation in your email. I think it's, I expect you have more expertise in this area than I do, but I'll also field it to Jan.
Well, I'm happy to promote my opinion. I mean, I came to learn things too, but from my opinion, the K-12 or elementary, secondary, in any government on the planet is the place where we need to do the most outreach for all of the various branches of open, in particular, open educational resources. And the problem has been that the OER movement has been based on this financial model where individuals, college students, are the ones who have historically been paying the bill. So the OER model saves them money. Now that's not true at all in elementary, secondary. Almost everywhere, only a few places that I can think of, there are some, where the government pays for most of the textbooks. Occasionally there's fees for some courses and some books, some places. So it's hard to position an open movement around saving money unless you're actually saving taxpayer dollars. But again, as you pointed out, this is nonpartisan. Everybody wants to save those tax dollars. The rub comes because once people start thinking about it, they're going to realize if we're not spending it on textbooks, we will need to spend it on teachers, learning how to use the textbook in an open educational practice. That's where the rub comes in lots of jurisdictions and governmental educational organizations. Like, oh, we've just been dictating to teachers what they should do. You mean you want us to let them create and do what they want? Oh, I'm not sure that's a good idea. So that's the problem we'll be facing, of course. I think it's solvable. And of course, I would promote that, yes, allowing teachers to do that is a good thing. But anyway, that's my opinion and some of the observations I've made over the time I've been working in this. And I'm happy to collaborate with anybody that in any area. So thank you for including me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Oh, go ahead, Jan.
Thank you so much, Dan. And this is a wonderful, wonderful point. I totally agree that there should be a lot of focus on K through 12, and that's also in many parts around the world. That's what local governments are often responsible for, and where they are most involved. And I'd love, and we would both love if this conversation continued, and if we could exchange more perspectives. We are almost out of time, but next week there will be a 2-hour session during Open Education Global Conference, and 2 hours will be a lot more time to get much more in depth. And also, I just pasted in the chat the link where we can also connect. There's a document with some questions, to start the conversation. Or continue the conversations that we are already having, and also the form that we would love, for you to fill out, and where we could keep in touch. Yeah, Jen, would you like to share more about that?
Sure. I think I just posted the right, the right Google form. Feel free to, in your own time, sign up for collaboration. Filling out this Google form, or also jump right into the brainstorming document. And we hope to see you next week as well. We have, as mentioned, more time next week, but even beyond this kind of conference season, we're really looking forward to seeing what we can do with OGP in the future. So please do stay in touch and share your ideas and share your questions.
Yes, and for those who are watching this on the recording, the link is bit.ly/OGP2020, bit.ly/OGP2020. So it's been a pleasure to connect with you briefly, and I totally hope that our conversations continue.
Me too. Thanks so much. And thanks, everyone.